Okay, Dame is going back to the Blazers. 3 years, $42 million. And before we dive into any basketball analysis, let's just appreciate how cool this moment is. He's going to be out for this entire upcoming season, recovering from his Achilles injury, which gives us time to really think about what this means. The deal includes a no-trade clause, which honestly surprised me. You don't see those very often in the NBA, so I'm assuming Dame specifically asked for it. Couldn't blame him for wanting some security after everything he's been through with trades and team changes. I mean, if this didn't happen, and Dame ended up finishing his career on a different team, we all still would have thought of him as a trailblazer anyway. But to actually see him back in that jersey for what could potentially be the rest of his career, that's something special. There's no guarantee he'll finish his career there, of course, but there's a decent chance we'll see Dame in red and black for years to come. When you think about the complete journey Dame has taken, it's pretty remarkable. If you want to look at what the final return was for the Blazers after the original Dame trade saga, after getting Jrue Holiday, then trading with the Celtics, the whole Robert Williams situation, the Bucks picks, all of it. They essentially got Dame back by the end of it all. He's been the face of that franchise for over a decade, through good times and bad. The Blazers get their franchise player back, and the fans get to see their hero in the jersey that made him famous. Sometimes these stories have happy endings, and this feels like one of those times. The loyalty he showed to that organization, even when things weren't perfect, means something. And now, after a brief stint away, he's back home where he belongs. That's basketball poetry right there. This isn't just about basketball, though. Dame represents something bigger for Portland. The timing works out well, too. Dame gets to recover from his injury in a familiar environment, with people who know him and understand what he's all about. Now, let's talk about the basketball side of things. Dame just turned 35 2 days ago, and he's coming back from an Achilles injury after missing an entire season. That's a lot to overcome. As far as getting to the basket and drawing free throws the way he used to, I expect a lot of that to decline. It's similar to what we saw with Kevin Durant after his Achilles injury. Still an incredible player, but the explosiveness to the rim just isn't quite the same. But here's what I think will still be there. That jump shot is going to be real. The handle is going to be real. He's still going to be a very smart, crafty player who knows how to score. But an Achilles injury at age 35 is serious business. The good news is that his game was never entirely dependent on athleticism. Dame's been a cerebral player his whole career, and that basketball IQ doesn't just disappear overnight. The playmaking ability is going to be real. Those are the skills that age well, especially for a player of Dame's caliber. However, you're probably going to have to cover for him defensively, and that's going to be a significant consideration. I'm not saying Dame's going to crater or anything like that. Defensively, the Blazers are going to need good defenders around Dame when he returns, which is actually something they have and should continue to have. DeAndre Ayton is still there. Donovan Klingon is developing into a real defensive presence. And Jrue Holiday will still be under contract when Dame comes back. If Jrue stays on the Blazers, that's a pretty significant contract. But based on his defensive impact, it could be worth it. With Holiday's experience and Klingon's rim protection, plus whatever other defensive pieces they add, there's a path to making this work. Dame's never been a lockdown defender, but he's never been a complete liability either. I've never seen anything about Scoot or Shedden to suggest they'd make things difficult either, with Jrue Holiday still on the team as well. You're looking at a backcourt that could have some really interesting combinations and rotations. The veteran leadership combined with young talent could create something special. Picture this. We're not going to see Dame at all this upcoming season. But in 2 years, imagine Donovan Klingon setting those bear hug screens to free up Dame for his pull-up jumper. That shot is still going to be there. That's the beauty of Dame's game. The shooting ability off the dribble isn't going anywhere. And with a big like Klingon creating space, it could be even more effective. Surround him with the right pieces, and his offensive impact can more than make up for any defensive limitations. Maybe it's Dame and Tamani Kamara working together, or Dame finding chemistry with other young players on the roster. The spacing that Dame provides just by being on the court opens up opportunities for everyone else. Now we're going to fast forward a couple of years and think about how this all fits together. Dame's always been elite at reading defenses and making the right play, whether that's pulling up for three, driving to the rim, or finding the open man. With better screeners and more athletic teammates around him, those skills could actually be enhanced. The key is putting him in positions where he can succeed without asking him to do too much physically. The backcourt situation is going to be interesting, with several young players to consider. Shaedon Sharpe is extension eligible right now, and Scoot Henderson has one more season before he becomes extension eligible. Scoot was much better in his second season than his first, which is encouraging for his development. Drew's 35 as well. So we'll see where the next few years of his career go, but I think defensively, he should still be solid. It's not like everybody needs to get out of the way for Dame's sake. This isn't a max contract situation where you're building everything around one player. Dame's salary is actually quite reasonable, which gives the team flexibility to develop their young talent alongside him. Versatility is huge too. He can play either guard position, which gives the coaching staff flexibility in how they use Dame, and these guys were really good defensively in the last chunk of the previous season. So there's evidence that this defensive foundation can work. The key will be having multiple defenders who can switch and cover for Dame. When opposing teams try to target him, here's the thing though. You repaying Dame $14 million per year on a relatively short contract? By all accounts, Dame is a super chill dude who's not going to create headaches for anyone. Depending on lineups and rotations, you can also picture some interesting toe-man games developing. Think about the pick-and-roll possibilities too. Let's talk about some of the other pieces on this roster. Anthony Simons' contract is descending, and he just had his best season for the Blazers. That's good timing for both him and the team. At $14 million per year, you were getting a former All-Star and one of the best shooters in the league at a fraction of what he used to make. That leaves room for the team to make other moves. Whether that's extending young players, adding veteran pieces, or making trades to improve the roster. Obviously, they're not the same players they once were, but the core of who they are has been able to maintain for a while. His shooting, his basketball IQ, his ability to make plays, these aren't things that just disappear overnight. The question is whether he can maintain enough of his other skills to still be effective overall. To be fair, as I talk about these positive examples, Chris Paul isn't even on a team right now, while Kyle Lowry is. So the aging process isn't always predictable. Can he still defend well enough to not be a liability? Can he create enough offense to justify his role? Can he stay healthy for extended stretches? Sometimes in sports, the story matters as much as the statistics. And this story, the prodigal son returning home, is pretty special. These are the questions that will determine whether this reunion is a success or just a nice story. For the fans, for the organization, and for Dame himself, this is how it should be, and we just have to wait and see how the basketball part plays out. But I still believe that the core of Dame's game, being a shooter off the dribble, being a real threat from three-point range, can still hold up even after the Achilles injury. Chris Paul still has that incredible assist-to-turnover ratio, and his basketball IQ is off the charts. Once his knees started to go, that was it. It wasn't a gradual decline. It was just suddenly, he wasn't good anymore. The Celtics moved on from him. He had brief stints with the Knicks and Dallas. Then Kemba was essentially out of the league. Lowry might be closer to being washed at this point. He averaged like 3 points for Philadelphia, but he was still able to hang on. For a while with his toughness and passing, Dame's been able to score from anywhere on the court, and a lot of that is skill-based rather than athleticism-based. His range, his ability to create space, his court vision. These are things that should translate even with reduced mobility. The question is whether he can maintain enough of his overall game to still be a positive contributor. So where does this leave us? Dame is going to be able to shoot. He's going to be able to shoot off the dribble. He's going to be able to run off ball sets to get open looks. He's going to be able to make plays for his teammates. These are the fundamentals of his game that should survive the injury and the aging process. Jeremy Grant is a guy who sometimes feels forgotten when you're thinking about this team's future. They'll need shooters to space the floor, defenders to cover his weaknesses, playmakers to share the ball handling duties. But with smart roster construction, this could work beautifully. When we think about aging and how players come back from major injuries, there are some encouraging examples. We've seen Klay Thompson come back pretty well from his Achilles injury, though he had more than just the Achilles to deal with. Kevin Durant is another example. He doesn't get to the rim as well as he once did, but his shot making is still incredible. He wasn't as good this past season, didn't shoot as well, and missed some games. Honestly, it's hard to imagine he's in their long-term plans, but we'll see. The beauty of Dame's deal is that it's not breaking the bank. With at least 1 year to plan and prepare, Dame could be stepping into a situation where the team is perfectly constructed around his current skill set. As far as guards being able to play into their mid to late 30s, we have Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry as recent examples. The key difference is that Dame's game has always been built around skills that should age well. When we think about guards who have dealt with injuries and fizzled out quickly, Kemba Walker comes to mind. The difference is that Dame's game was never as dependent on explosive athleticism as Kemba's was. The real test will be everything else. But here's what I keep coming back to. Dame is back in Portland, wearing the jersey that made him famous, playing for the organization that drafted him and believed in him from the beginning. Even if Dame isn't the same player he was 5 years ago, even if there are limitations and challenges ahead, having him back in a Blazers uniform feels right.